First play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media outside of Gillette Stadium, outside the practice field, as the Patriots just got through their first OTA practice open to the media, their second of the spring. We're going to bring you a special Patriots Daily episode here. We'll talk about all our takeaways about what we saw. First and foremost, some absences noteworthy. Stephon Diggs, Ramondre Stevenson, Sidney So, and Joshua Farmer all not here out at practice. We believe So, Farmer, potentially injury-related. Obviously, we know Diggs with the knee. Ramondre Stevenson going through some personal things. I believe he lost his father a few weeks back, so he's the reason he's not out here. Mike Vrabel spoke about that prior to practice as well. And before we even get into that, Taylor, Vrabel spoke at length about just sort of what they want to get out of OTAs throughout the spring, mentioning that, communication and making sure we're in and out of the huddle quick, things of that nature. What else did you pick up from him prior to practice before we even got out here?
Well, the first was that physicality is not an element of OTA practices. If you listen to the Mike Vrabel press conference, I, asked a bit of a silly question at the beginning, but we did get some much better insight from better questions where he did mention, like, specifically for the offense, it's so much about the operation, making sure things are crisp, because right now when you don't have pads, he mentioned, like, we're not really watching, the offensive line run blocking or anything. It's limited what we're able to take away. So for now, offensively, there's things like pass protection. He mentioned, like, when it comes to the hands, the pad level, there's things that you can glean, but really you just want to be able to come out in the summer, and by then the operation's clean, right? Like the past few years, we've seen situations, not so much under Bill O'Brien, but with less experienced coordinators, we've seen where the Patriots offense, like deep into the summer, it feels like they're not getting out of the huddle in time. They're starting to accrue penalties, something that Vrabel actually mentioned specifically, that we don't want to be breaking the huddle and have like 5 seconds to snap the ball. So they want to have a clean operation. That was the biggest thing. And it felt like for the most part today, I didn't necessarily, it was the first day for us out here, even though it's a second OTA. So it kind of was drinking out of a fire hose, still getting our sea legs a little bit. But it didn't seem like there were any significant communication errors or operation errors. And for this early, that's a promising sign, although there were also plenty of signs of just how early it was in the process, because it wasn't a clean operation post-snap all the time.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a few minutes as we go through offensive and defensive takeaways. On that physicality front, too, I thought it was funny. There looked like an NFLPA member here kind of taking over and looking at practice.
That was like Vrabel's main op today, was the NFLPA representative.
So, for behind the scenes, look, he sort of took Mike Vrabel off to the side. It looked like they were talking about maybe there was a little bit too much physicality at practice, some guys on the ground. Mike Vrabel, him going back at it, back and forth a little bit. Nothing crazy, but I saw at one point he literally grabbed Vrabel by the shoulders and was like, you guys can't do this, you can't do that.
Giving Vrabel a taste of his own medicine.
Exactly. And soon after that, Vrabel's yelling at everyone, stay off the field, stay off the ground. So, again, it's OTAs. You got to be careful there. But
there was a play a couple snaps after, too, where somebody did wind up on the ground, and you saw him go, oh.
Yeah, he just threw his head up in the air like, we are going to get fined for this. Don't know if that's actually going to happen. But let's start with the offense. And the big headline here on offense, Drake Maye throws 4 interceptions out here at practice. 2 of them interception by Christian Gonzalez. But overall, I know that it's early. You're not really full speed. But what do you make of Drake Maye throwing 4 interceptions this early in the process at this OTA practice?
Well, we have said that it's going to take time for the offense to gel, and that's the case with almost every single team in the NFL. Very few clubs are able to have the kind of continuity where there's not going to be an OTA period or two where things look kind of ugly, and that's what this was. It was the second day out here, the first one that we saw. But you could see this is a unit where it's a new offense. They're installing things, and it's going to take a little bit of time for that crispness to get there. There was one example where Christian Gonzalez, according to Mario Douglas, it looked like there were some times where guys might have slipped, and there was one specifically that live looked like a miscommunication. I asked Mario Douglas, who made sure, he's like, hey, this year we're not doing that miscommunication stuff, but he did say it was, I believe, a roll drill where he said that Christian Gonzalez came down. I guess Drake Maye didn't spot that rotation. That was what led to the interception, because DeMario Douglas sat down on the route where it looked like Drake was trying to throw outside. We saw that last year, too, early on in training camp, so you do want to see, they go in the film room. Tonight is the time for you to say, hey, all right, we did this. We're going to clean this up so that when we're back out here on Thursday, ideally when Drake is throwing those stick routes and those short routes that aren't super difficult on paper but do require timing and chemistry, they'll be a little bit cleaner. So it's obviously not encouraging, but this is so early in the offseason program. Just OTAs, pads aren't even on. These are the times to make those mistakes so you can go into the classroom and get better at them going forward.
Absolutely. That was the one interception by Maye. The other one was on a deep route. He was targeting Kyle Williams, who did rotate in with that, want to call it first team offense, if you will, but he was targeting him deep. Christian Gonzalez came out and undercut one of those as well. He did look pretty good today, Gonzo, overall. Talked about his off season and how he's into Pilates now. And he's kind of
not easy Pilates apparently.
Working muscles that he didn't even know he had. So we'll talk about him a little bit when we get to the defensive takeaways. But on that note, and on Kyle Williams working in with the offensive guys with, groupings like Kayshon Boutte with Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, even Efton Chisholm getting in there a little bit. It's pretty clear that there are no starters necessarily on the offense. There's guys who are those first-team contenders, if you will, but they're really trying to work a bunch of guys in to see what kind of different wide receiver combinations and offensive line combinations as well. We saw Mike Onwenu and Morgan Moses together as a pair on the right side, and then behind them, Wes Schweitzer and
Will Campbell.
Will Campbell on the other side with Wes Schweitzer. Cole Strange was working in at left guard as well. So again, just continuing to turn guys out. Caden Wallace turned into the second right tackle, and then Schweitzer, I believe, moved over. They're working.
It was a lot going on.
They're working a lot of combinations.
I can sit through some of that too. Yeah,
and that's kind of where we're at right now. I feel like they're giving guys a chance to win jobs, but also just see how they want to work guys through. And
I think being limited personnel wise was a big part of that as well. Like there was a ton of shuffling, and I asked Vrabel before practice. I got a second chance at it. I think I did a little bit better at that swing, where it was just we're gonna make a big deal out of the depth chart. He cut me off and was like, "Yeah, no, I get that. That's gonna happen." Yeah. But then it was okay. So what is your philosophy? Is it gonna be veterans first, and then young guys got to earn it, or what? And he said, "No, you're gonna see like rotations. There's going to be a lot of basically competition," and that's exactly what we saw. Now, there was no Matt Collins. There was no Stephon Diggs. Morgan Moses didn't really participate in team drills. Mike Onwenu wasn't a full participant in team drills. So a lot of the rotation we saw, I think, had to do with the fact that there just weren't a lot of stable bodies at a lot of positions. But then you saw guys like Jack Conley was used at guard. He was used at tackle. So that was kind of cool, and that was with the top offense. Like you mentioned, Kyle Williams was working with the top offense. Efton Chisholm got a lot of opportunities at that Z spot. There were some top jobs where it's pretty clear who is seen as the front runner, at least for right now. We're like Kendrick Bourne.
For example, Will Campbell, left tackle.
Will Campbell, Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, Drake Maye, Antonio Gibson. Like those were the guys where clearly they are at a level above other people, but there was a lot of competition and mixing, which was great to see. But also while we're talking about the offense and kind of the young guys, seeing Will Campbell in the times he wasn't on the field with Morgan Moses, I know you did a great job. You spotted that later, but consistently throughout practice, those guys talking to each other. At the end of practice right over there, you could actually see Morgan Moses with like 3 or 4 young guys, and he's mentioned how he wanted to be at OTAs. It was really important for him because he understands this is a really young room. And when he was signed, he talked about it in his first presser. He understands his role as a veteran leader in this room. Also credited Garrett Bradbury. Said he's been a phenomenal presence, the veteran center. So it is really cool to see this is a young room with a lot of talent, but they now have, I think, the buoys in those veterans where they know how to learn, how to go about their day on a consistent basis. So, a lot of shuffling on the offense. We are still pretty far from knowing how exactly this team is going to look. Kayshon Boutte, also a fixture of the top offense at X, I should mention. But, there's a lot of youth, but also a lot of veteran presence. Hopefully, when it comes to the receiver room, those veterans can get on the field sooner rather than later, specifically Matt Collins.
Yeah, I noticed as soon as there was like a break in the offensive action when they went to field goal, which we'll get to in a second too, Will Campbell immediately sought out Morgan Moses and was kind of just, they weren't necessarily working through anything, but they were talking and they kind of sit and spoke with each other for like 5 minutes. Same thing next break. He sought out Morgan Moses again. So he's clearly going to him. He was a leader in college. He's trying to be a leader here even as a rookie. So he's going towards Morgan Moses. Thought that was interesting. And you mentioned the little, the shindig he had over here.
Powwow.
Yeah, the little powwow he had with the young guys. That started with Morgan Moses and Will Campbell. The other guys eventually came over. So he's clearly
setting the standard,
working with him. So I thought that was pretty cool. You mentioned Kayshon Boutte. My last actual takeaway from the offense was a catch made by Javon Baker. Back shoulder throw, Drake Maye contested with Christian Gonzalez pretty much draped on him. He picked it out right out of the air. I thought that was very impressive from him. And on top of that, Baker was working in. Jalen Polk, not so much. He was kind of working off on another field. It looks like he was, I don't know if it's an injury. I don't know if he's trying to get his own legs under him.
So I can add to that.
Working with one coach, but go ahead. Yeah,
because I think Jalen Polk's dealt with a shoulder injury. Yeah. So the fact that he wasn't participating, I think that's part of the reason. Also didn't see Jared Wilson out there for the offense. So there were a few young guys that weren't part of the rotation. I think I know people in the comments were asking, what Efton Chisholm's at Z, where's Jalen Polk? He wasn't really practicing. But also to build on what you mentioned with that last period for Drake Maye, I guess we'll get into it now because the offense, especially the passing game, run game, you're not really gleaning a whole lot. Pass game was ugly for the beginning.
It was.
Like, the first 2 periods were bad. We touched on the interceptions. There weren't a whole lot of highlights, so it was Drake Maye's short throw, sometimes a miscommunication, and then him going deep. There was one deep ball to Kayshon Boutte in double coverage. Looked like every post that Drake Maye threw to Kayshon Boutte last year, where he has a chance at it and can't bring it in. The deep passing game just looked totally out of sorts, which, again, it's early. You're trying to shake the rust off and get some momentum going. But I was very glad for that last competitive period because I'm thinking, okay, we have something good to say, and the headline isn't just Drake Maye with the 4 interceptions.
4 picks,
exactly, because you started to see the playmaking, because the first play of that final competitive period, honey hole shot against cover 2 between the corner and the safety to Kyle Williams. Love that one. Then you also had before that an anticipatory throw over the middle to Hunter Henry, and then put the cherry on top with that last throw to Javon Baker, where pre-snap I'm looking at the lineup and I'm like, all right, where is he going to go with this? Because it was obvious man coverage. Saw Javon with Gonzo, and I'm like, all right, so not there. Who's over here? And he trusted his young guy. And we saw last year, like, Drake will throw to Javon when he's on the field. Perfect back shoulder ball. Nice job by Baker bringing it in. Because Gonzo had airtight coverage. I really thought he might knock it out late.
Yeah, so those are the kinds of things, too, you like to see, where Drake Maye struggles early in practice. It doesn't get to his head. Again, I say practice, and yes, it's obviously practice, but it's more of like an on-field session, basically taking the classroom out here, because they're not working so fast. So to kind of work through things, make a mistake, and then bounce back and have a successful period, obviously good to see. Not worried about Drake Maye just yet, even though the headline, like you said, will be the 4 interceptions.
That's why people are going to be here. That's why you're clicking on the video.
Exactly. But that is the headline, if you will. Drake Maye throws 4 picks, bounces back, and the offense, with guys rotating through, still sort of coming to shape. PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all, and all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on PrizePicks, and you can cash in on the basketball playoffs with PrizePicks. So don't miss your last chance to add your players from the court to your PrizePicks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, or anything else, pick more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Think Connor McDavid will get more than 1 goal next week? Will Brad Marchand hit for more than 5 shots on goal? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this hockey season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. And all you got to do is download the app today, create an account, and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. PrizePicks, run your game. We'll move on to the defense. Highlighted by 2 Christian Gonzalez interceptions of Drake Maye, 1 on the miscommunication, 1 on that deep ball to Kyle Williams. What did you see defensively today that sort of stood out here? Christian Barmore out here, Milton Williams out here, obviously. So some good signs there. The only absence was Joshua Farmer on the defensive side of the ball. So pretty healthy on the defensive side, but what did you see from them today?
It was just pretty awesome seeing it, especially that defensive front and cornerback room in the first group together, because you got the Milton Williams, Barmore, we had Keon White opposite Harold Landry, then you got Spillane at the second level. Seemed like they were kind of rotating the guys next to him. We saw some of, I think we actually saw Cam Riley at some points. We saw Christian Ellis, we saw Jack Gibbons, like different combinations, but very obvious that Spillane is the middle linebacker in that group. Carlton Davis was kind of in and out. We saw some of Alex Austin and Marcus Jones there as well, but like you said, Gonzo looked like Gonzo, nothing to worry about there. Safety was actually pretty interesting because we didn't have really Peppers or Duggar practicing. It was really Jalen Hawkins. And who was the second safety? It was we saw
Del Pettis.
We saw some of Craig Woodson. So a lot of movement at the safety position. But really the defensive line, I think we have a pretty good idea of what that looks like. It's Milton Williams and Christian Barmore, 2 of the highest paid players on the team. Shocker. Another one of the highest paid players in Harold Landry. But then we talked about it yesterday. That other edge spot seemed like it was kind of going to be up for grabs because you had Keon White, who you assumed was going to be there because of all his talent and his youth, but you also had Caleb Chason. You also have Anthony Jennings, Swinson, Ponder. And the way it worked out was it looked like that Caleb Chason was the third edge with Landry and Keon White being the main guys on the outside. And really, we only saw Anthony Jennings with Truman Jones. Yeah. That was the only guy that I saw him repping with. And we were also wondering, is it going to be like Jennings and Chason switching based on situation? If they're going to go with more 4-man fronts, it's going to be tough to justify a guy like Anthony Jennings. Same thing with Jelani Tavai, who also rotated at times with the tight top offense because their versatility in a front that is going to be versatile but won't use as many of those five-man fronts, which I think they still should with their personnel, that could hurt his value. So Anthony Jennings with Truman Jones, not ideal. And then we saw Swinson and Ponder on the same line, which makes sense as young guys. So that top defense, even Morgan Moses said, like, this is a great defense we've got. Mentioned Keon White and him exchanging notes, trying to learn from each other and get better, because he said, like, the point of this is for us to get as good as we can. We want to teach each other, help each other along, so that by the time we face another opponent, we're ready. So my main takeaways for the defense, a lot of excitement in that top group for sure.
Two things on that, three things actually. I did think it was cool Morgan Moses mentioning the fact that they, as they work together, they use those defensive ends will give the tackles tips on kind of where to go this way, where to go that way, to help their game on the other side. Also, just on the coaching front, no Terrell Williams out here as he's still dealing with a health scare. Zach Kerr leading that crew, and Mike Vrabel working almost exclusively with the offense. So you can tell that he clearly has some confidence in those guys to be able to run that side of the show. And the fact that Williams isn't out here, but Vrabel isn't there kind of overseeing it, just letting them kind of do their thing while he worries about the offense, which is seemingly more, I don't want to say important, but you kind of want to put more focus on them right now.
For sure.
In the OTAs, I thought was interesting. He was really running 7-on-7, 11-on-11s on the offense, while Josh McDaniels was sort of not taking a back seat, but in the back, just focused on calling the plays, getting it out, and then Vrabel was sort of the one running the show. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was cool to see. Not only that he had the deference for the defense, but that he's going to sort of have a hand in this offense as well.
And as Morgan Moses said, it's not just the offensive line. This is a young offense, period.
Right.
We're talking about the starters who are on the field. Kendrick Bourne and the tight ends were the only guys who you're looking at, like, older guys with experience, obviously veterans in the McDaniel system. But then you got Kayshon Boutte, you got Demario Douglas. Like, those guys obviously have shown talent. They've never been in an offense anything close to, not anything close. Obviously, they had Bill O'Brien.
Right.
But this specific version of the offense is still going to be new to them, and the attention to detail is going to be very high. And like we saw in the Kayshon Boutte throw, it's just like you wanted to see that step, and it's still early. Hopefully he shows it. But it's a young group, so it makes sense to see Vrabel on that side, because on the defense, there's not a whole lot of young guys, especially with that top group.
Last takeaway I had, special teams-wise, Andres Borogalis goes 4 for 4. John Parker-Oma goes 2 for 4. Feels like that competition is already over, not just because it's today, but because in general it's going to be.
It looked completely different.
It did look completely different. They're going to give the job to the draft pick, but Parker almost still here, working out. Any other final takeaways to glean before we get out of here on this not live, but this podcast edition of our stand up here?
I will say, I'm not trying to pile on Parker Romo, but there were some shanks. Like, he made one that barely got in there, and then there were some really ugly misses. So I'm glad they went with a kicker. Anybody who's upset that the Patriots spent a draft pick on a kicker, I think it's probably going to work out pretty well for them. But yeah, not a whole lot. Again, it's OTAs. I guess you can see, like, Vrabel's doing the moving around thing.
He's making his presence pretty clear as Mike Vrabel.
Thomas Brown, saw him talking to Josh McDaniels. He's a very vocal presence on the field. We saw that back in the bubble during rookie minicamp. That's translated. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It was they ended it not quite as intense, but productive day, more for the defense, I'd say, for the offense, but it just makes it more exciting to get out here on Thursday and see how the offense has grown in the past couple days.
Absolutely. So that's going to be it for us here on this Patriots Daily version of our stand-up here. Patriots just wrapped up their first OTA open to the media, second of the offseason. Mike Vrabel makes his presence known, offensively running around like a madman out here, basically picking up everything. One final note, actually, because he's kind of running the offense. Every time someone would come back, he would always have a comment. And it sounds like that's obvious from a coach, but it's not like he was just honed in on the quarterbacks or the receivers or the offensive line. He's able to watch the play and take in just about everything and then give his feedback. So I thought that was super interesting. But the rest of the day lowlighted by Drake Maye's 4 interceptions, Christian Gonzalez makes 2, and the Patriots just continue on this road to 2025. So we'll be back here on the channel. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to Patriots Daily, and check out Patriots Press Pass for all of our Patriots coverage. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you soon. Peace out, everyone.